My name is James Hardy, and I'm the Asia-Pacific editor of IHS Jane's Defence Weekly. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's intelligence briefing, which will feature recent highlights from imagery-led, a newly launched product that is a collaboration between IHS Janes and DigitalGlobe. IHS Janes and DigitalGlobe have been working together for 5 years to publish imagery-led articles that provide critical context to defence and security issues. In December, we extended this partnership working with DigitalGlobe's Analysis Centre to launch Imagery Watch. In doing so, we now have a fantastic opportunity to further combine our own experts' data and analysis with DigitalGlobe's capabilities, including more than 700 square kilometres of imagery captured each year, an archive covering more than 1 billion square kilometres, and a team of analysts with experience in conducting imagery analysis at the very highest levels. Watch is entirely dedicated to satellite imagery analysis and sits within the Jane's Military and Security Assessments Intelligence Centre, a flagship military capability and security threat analysis product. Each month, Imagery Watch features analysis of both emerging defence and security events as they unfold, as well as those, such as North Korea's nuclear program, that have proven to be regular fixtures on our watch list. We also partnered with Terrago Technologies to geo-enable each Imagery Watch article to allow users to view imagery in 3 dimensions, to identify coordinates, and to measure, annotate, and analyze images. It gives me particular pleasure to introduce our DigitalGlobe speakers. Namely, Joe Ulrich, who will analyze Russia's military facility at Ugardanta, and who will analyze Iran's target airbase, Andrew Davenport, who will analyze China's Wengchang launch facility, Andrew Steele, who will analyze China's Shenyang aircraft facility, Joe Rich, who will analyze North Korea's Punggye-ri nuclear test facility, and DJ Malman, who will analyze Heglig oil facility in Sudan. They will be joined by senior DigitalGlobe analyst Joseph Bermudez and Alison Puccioni, IHS Jane's senior imagery analyst, for the Q&A session. Before we start, I have a few technical housekeeping points to help you to get the most from this event. In case this is your first event, the IHS Jane's Intelligence Briefing Series will feature about 40 events this year and is available to all customers of Jane's Intelligence Centre or module products. I encourage you to ask questions during the presentation. To this, please use the Q&A or chat boxes on the right side of your screen, and most importantly, direct your questions to all panelists. Your questions will be put to the presenters at the end of the session. Any questions we don't get around to answering during this event will be addressed by analysts after the briefing. When you enter this briefing, you are automatically connected to the audio using your computer speakers. If you prefer to listen via the telephone, please click the Request Telephone icon above the chat window and follow the instructions that pop up. You should turn down the volume on your computer speakers if you wish to listen via the phone. This will eliminate any echo you may experience. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes my introduction, and I'll now hand over to our first speaker, Joe Ulrich.
Thank you very much. I'm one of the imagery analysts here at DigitalGlobe Analytics team. I'll be sharing 2 presentations, of which is on the Ugardanta Russian military base in Georgia. The key components of the facility and some of the activity I have observed over the past 6 months. So next slide, please. The military base was completed just before the Russia-Georgia conflict in 2008. It is located 20 kilometers south of the Russia-Georgia border along the highway leading from the Oki Tunnel. Our facility consists of 6 operational areas. This presentation is primarily focused on the barracks, motor pool, ordnance storage, and field training areas. The image off to the side of this slide is the ordnance storage area. Next slide, please. Looking at this overview image, it's very easy to see just how large the base actually is. It is usually positioned between the river valley to the south and the mountains to the north and west. I've annotated the three main areas of the facility. Next slide, please. There are two barracks and administration buildings on the base. Given their size and capacity, the intent to maintain a large brigade plus size force for extended periods of time is apparent. Platoon-sized formations of 18 to 27 personnel were observed marching within the base on earlier imagery. You can see a handful of personnel on the parade ground in this image as well. What I'll point out is that each area within the base has its own wall security, and some of them even have their own entry control points with guard checks. You can also see on the main road going through the center of the image there, like a row of vehicles, like VIPs or outdoor of some type. Next, please. This image is the base motor pool. It's been secured and organized by vehicle type. At the time this image was collected, there were 110 armored vehicles and approximately 70 support vehicles, which make up 3 battalions. Signs that expansion is underway can be seen throughout this particular image. Footers for 4 additional parking buildings have been dug, and you can see up to the top right there, there are the U-shaped ditches, and you can see some of the concrete pylons being put in as well. Large moving equipment can be seen at the top of the image as the small yellow specks, and that they're conducting grading and leveling in preparation for additional construction. Next slide, please. Ordnance and missile storage area. There's a couple key identification features that suggest that this is what this area is. One located 1,000 meters east of the main base, and it's surrounded by triple fences, triple ditches, and double revetments. So it's off from the base so that if any accident should occur, it doesn't affect the rest of the base. And given its amount of security, it's obvious that people aren't wanted within. Additionally, each of the buildings is set within revetments. This is done to contain any explosions and stop further damage within the facility should an accident actually occur. Next, please. This area to be a field training area. It's located about 1,200 meters north of the main base. The area is fence secured and consists of a parking area and encampment, which is 10 tents. You can see what appears to be an armored personnel vehicle parked within our revetments just outside the encampment. Next, please. That concludes my presentation, and I'll now turn the time over to Andy Denville, one of our lead imagery analysts.
Hello, my name is Andy Denville. I am a senior analyst with DigitalGlobe's Analysis Center. Today I'd like to present a briefing on some information regarding a target airbase used by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps last summer. The information in this report is extracted, some information is extracted from a report published through James last fall. Next slide, please. Between July 2nd and July 4th, 2012, the IRGC launched several types of short and medium-range missiles at a recently constructed target airbase located in the desert of central Iran. The exercise was part of a demonstration of Iran's capability to respond to military threats and to show that its missiles have the ability to reach places like Israel, the European continent, and most U.S. and Western military bases in and around the Middle East. Iran's Fars news agency reported that dozens of various types of missiles were fired from different parts of Iran at a single mock airbase target in the Kavir Desert. Among the missiles reported fired during the exercise were Shahab-1, Shahab-2, Shahab-3, Khalil-Fars, Fateh-110s, Qiyam, Tondar, and Zelzal missiles. Slide, please. Though not disclosed by the Iranian military or media, DigitalGlobe's Analytics Center discovered the location of the target airbase in the Dasht-i-Kavir, also known as Great Salt Desert, and collected several sub-meter satellite images of the area after the exercise. Located south of Shenyang, one of Iran's principal missile development, test, evaluation, and launch facilities, it was determined that the airbase location had been used as a firing range for missile testing previously. Next slide, please. On July 30, 2012 image, you can see that the overall size of the target airbase is roughly 2 kilometers by 3 kilometers. And based on a review of historic Landsat imagery, it was determined that construction of the mock airbase had begun sometime in April and May 2012 timeframe. Next slide, please. Features of the airbase appear to have been bulldozed and possibly treated with oil to create roads, parking, storage area, etc. types of features to represent the airbase. On the airbase appear to be tent-like structures constructed probably from some sort of arching support type of structure holding up either cloth or tulip type of material. The image shows these features after approximately a month in the open desert environment where high winds have shredded some of the covers. Next slide, please. News sources reported that during the Great Prophet 7 exercises, Iran Armed Forces launched a number of domestically produced missiles to demonstrate its defense capabilities and dissuade potential aggressors. Iran has developed its indigenous missile program with the help of North Korean, Russian, and Chinese technology and expertise. Iran has purchased several systems and collaborated with these countries to engineer and manufacture performance and capabilities enhancements for their missile systems. In this particular image, we present the distribution of the impact craters on target airbase as a result of the Great Prophet 7 missile firing exercise. What we see are yellow crosshairs that show the location of the impact craters. And the numbers, although hard to read, represent the diameter or the size of the impact craters for each strike. Not a lot can be determined about individual missile systems from satellite imagery alone. However, some general conclusions may be drawn regarding the fact that several missiles obviously did not strike the airbase, and some assessment can be made for the general distribution of the impact themselves. Next slide, please. Iranian media sources distributed a report shortly after the conclusion of the war games that provided background and an explanation of the missile exercise and aerial footage of the mock airbase, as well as coverage of the missile strikes during the exercise. The satellite imagery indicated the target airbase was struck with just over 20 missiles, and a variety of impact craters with sizes ranging from 5 meters up to 15 meters were identified in the area. Most crater dimensions ranged between 5 and 7 meters. Next, please. In the southeast corner of the target, an area was apparently struck with a different type of ordnance. You'll notice in this image in the lower right-hand corner a very tight cluster of impact craters. In this specific area, there were approximately 18 impact craters closely grouped together, whose dimensions were roughly 2 meters in size. Although this area was likely not struck with conventional surface-to-surface missiles, open source reports indicate that Iranian UAVs and drones had been used as part of the mock attack on an airbase. These could potentially explain the the pattern that we see in this corner of the airbase. Next slide, please. Indications from the pattern and layout of the mock airbase suggest that the Kandahar military airbase in Afghanistan may have been used as the basis for the layout of the target. The selection of Kandahar represents a clear challenge to the U.S. presence in Afghanistan and its significant military buildup at this airbase. While using several of its medium-range missiles in this exercise, Iran clearly sent the message that they have the ability to fire on locations such as Kandahar, located approximately 500 kilometers from Iran's eastern border, as well as numerous other established Western air bases in and around the Persian Gulf from Iranian soil, and also potentially from the missile launch facility at Semnan. With several missile systems able to strike targets 500 to 1,300 kilometers away, this extends the reach of the Iranian military well beyond its borders. I will conclude at that point and turn over presentation to Andrew Davenport.
This is Andrew Davenport. I'm an imagery analyst for DigitalGlobe's Analysis Center. I'll be briefing you today on the Wengchang Space Center, sometimes referred to as the Wengchang Satellite Launch Center. Next slide. Located in southern China on the strategic tropical island of Hainan, the Wengchang Space Center has been under construction for 5 years and is scheduled to be completed sometime between 2014 and 2015 with a price tag of $2.5 billion US. In addition to the Space Center, there will be a research center and a theme park where visitors can view launches firsthand. Chinese officials thought a major space launch facility on the island would be too vulnerable to foreign attack, but the international political environment changed and a new space center was approved in 2007 by the Central Military Commission. When complete, the Wengchang Space Center will be China's fourth and southernmost space center, others being Jiuquan, Taiyuan, and Xianyang, which are all located deep inside the country. Because of its altitude at 19 degrees above the equator, rockets launched from this site will consume less fuel, be able to lift larger payloads, and achieve geosynchronous orbits more easily, all essential to continued growth of China's space program. The Space Center will undoubtedly be used for primary launch facility for China's new generation CZ-5 and CZ-7 family of heavy lift launch vehicles, which are being developed and are expected to become operational in 2014. And the following images are the entire complex throughout its development. Next slide. This slide shows an overview of the entire area with our most recent image taken on January 14, 2013. The launch center is located in the middle. Note the two areas under development on the top of the slide. The one to the left are for people who had to be relocated during this project. The new road on the left of the slide is part of infrastructure upgrades occurring throughout the area. Construction of a theme park will be located just southwest of the Space Center and does not appear to have been started at this point. The cost of the theme park is estimated at $455 million US. Tracking stations will be located 15 kilometers to the northeast of this location and are not visible on this image. Slide. Now we see the beginning of construction back in 2010 occurring at the top of the slide. The area was originally composed of small villages and farmland prior to construction. These occupants were relocated to the area previously mentioned. Next slide. At this point in 2011, construction is in full swing and the general layout of the facility and location of key components can be seen. Groundwork has started on the liquid hydrogen production plant, fueling facility, and the rocket transportation road, which measures 2.6 kilometers in length. The vertical processing buildings are under construction as well as the umbilical towers. Next slide. In 2012, we start to see construction of the liquid hydrogen production plant, spacecraft fueling building, spacecraft processing building, and the launch control center. The support area is nearly complete. Next slide. At this point in the presentation, I would like to zoom in a little closer to areas located within the Space Center, starting on the north side. We see the location of a vertical processing building in 2010 prior to construction with building materials presumably used for its assembly. Next slide. By 2011, construction of the Long March 5 vertical processing building is underway and steel girders are visible. Groundwork is underway for the Long March 7 vertical processing building. Next slide. In this 2012 image, a good amount of progress has been made in the two vertical processing buildings from the previous year. The Long March 5 vertical processing building on the left will house the 5-meter by 60-meter Long March 5 rocket, and the Long March 7 vertical processing building on the right will house the 3.35-meter by 55-meter March 7 rocket. Length and width measurements of the two buildings confirm they have the same dimensions, 44 meters by 58 meters. Although when completed, I would expect the Long March 5 building height will be taller to accommodate the larger rocket. Note the horizontal rocket receiving bay is taking shape. Next slide. Now we move to the southern area of the Space Center where the launch pads are located. Here we see some general earth moving and excavation for the site in 2010. Next slide. By early 2012, we can see the launch pad area is most developed and groundwork is underway for the buildings that will support them. These buildings are the liquid hydrogen fueling facility, gas storage facility, liquid oxygen facility, and the kerosene fueling facility. Next slide. I've reached the final slide showing the development of the launch pad area in October of 2012. Notice the nearly completed flame trench for Launch Pad 1 is larger than Launch Pad 2 to accommodate the larger CZ-5 rocket and possibly even larger ones. Construction on the support buildings previously mentioned has begun and a roof can be seen on the gas storage building. After viewing DigitalGlobe's imagery, it appears that it's likely the Space Center will meet its 2014 or 2015 completion date on time. This concludes my presentation. Our next speaker will be Andrew Steele, and he will be briefing you on the Shenyang Beiling Airbase.
Hello, my name is Andrew Steele, and I am an imagery analyst for the DigitalGlobe Analytics team. I would like to present the Shenyang Beiling Airbase in Liaoning Province, China. First, present an overview of the airbase, and then go through some images captured by DigitalGlobe in 2012. Showing airbase expansion activity and aircraft activity. Next slide, please. Shenyang Beiling Airbase is located on the northern outskirts of Shenyang, the capital and largest city in Liaoning Province. The base is home to one of China's oldest aircraft manufacturing companies, the Chang Aircraft Corporation. The corporation is well known for designing and producing fighter jets, such as the J-8 and the J-11B. It has been under recent media spotlight regarding the development of new aircraft, such as the J-15 multi-role fighter and the next-generation stealth fighter known as the J-31. The base is comprised of the runway, taxiway, apron, and several support buildings used for research, development, testing, and evaluation. It even has an aircraft museum and a 4-star hotel. Let's take a closer look at some of these areas. Next slide, please. This is the front entrance of the airbase. Judging the size and proximity to the front gate, the large buildings to the bottom of the image are likely one of the main administrative support buildings. The crest-shaped building to the top of the image is the 4-star hotel, named after the Aircraft Corporation. Next slide, please. The Shenyang Aircraft Corporation Aircraft Museum. The museum is certified as a national tourism site and provides information about the history of the Chinese aviation sciences and development of Chinese fighter jets. It shows various aircraft on display, including the Nanchang Y-5 and the Chengdu J-7 fighter. Slide, please. This is the airbase apron. It is used for fueling, testing, and provides a space for the aircraft to rest and park. The colored buildings to the right of the image are hangars to hold and protect aircraft. The structure with the red roof is also used for aircraft shelter. I'd like to bring your attention to the aircraft testing area towards the bottom of the image. The central building with a square pad on each side of it. marks suggest that some type of engine testing may be conducted here. Next slide, please. Here's another look at the airbase, highlighting the taxiway and the industrial area. Also recognize some of the other areas previously introduced. The long taxiway has access to the apron and hangars, as well as large buildings which could be used for aircraft assembly and evaluation. The indoor area, characterized by the slanted roofs, mainly manufactures aircraft parts and components. Next, please. In 2012, DigitalGlobe collected 21 cloud-free images of the Shenyang Beiling Airbase. The following slides include highlights from these images, focusing on facility expansion activity and aircraft activity. Next slide, please. During the second half of 2012, significant expansion activity was observed at the airbase. This is an image acquired on July 14, 2012. Initial groundwork for the construction is underway, with vertical stabilizers for the building visible. Next slide, please. In over 3 months, major foundation work is done and roofing is intact. However, we could still see debris on the roof and around the building, suggesting that the overall construction is not yet complete. Also, please note the size of the building. It is 212 meters by 95 meters, making it more than 20,000 square meters, or 216,000 square feet. Large size and close proximity to the runway and taxiway suggests that the building is very strategic. Next slide, please. Now let's move on to aircraft activity. This image acquired on November 7, 2012 shows 6 J-7 fighters parked towards the bottom of the image. Towards the top of the image, we could see a J-11 fighter and 3 J-8 fighters. Once again, I would like to bring your attention back to the aircraft testing area towards the middle of the image, where 2 J-11 fighters are seen on the testing pads. The distinctive yellow paint seen on these fighters are often associated with newly developed aircraft or experimental prototypes. More recently, we have seen this similar yellow color on the J-15 multi-role fighter conducting flight testing operations aboard China's newly commissioned aircraft carrier, the Xianyang. Next, please. Here is a rare look at China's newest stealth fighter, a possible J-31. Manufactured locally here in Shenyang, the stealth fighter reportedly consists of a twin engine with a wingspan of 10 meters and a length of 16 to 17 meters. The general characteristics are smaller than China's other stealth fighter in development, the Chengdu J-20. The J-31 fighter was seen at the aircraft testing area in this image on October 2nd, just a couple of weeks prior to its first public flight. Also, there are several cars surrounding the aircraft, which could be VIP members taking a closer look at the nation's newest stealth fighter. Next, please. At this point, I would like to conclude my presentation and pass it back to Joel Ulrich, who will be presenting on the Punggye-ri nuclear test site.
Thank you, Andrew. Punggye-ri nuclear test site is North Korea's primary nuclear explosive test facility. It was created in the late 1990s and is located 17 kilometers northwest of Punggye-ri, within the Xianyang province. This facility was used to conduct 3 underground nuclear weapons tests in 2006, 2009, and one earlier last month. Slide, please. Although the facility is comprised of several satellite areas, this presentation is focused on the west portal and south portal, annotated on the image we're looking at now. The other things that we've annotated are the spoils piles that are associated with both the west and south portal, and also the main operations compound in the center of the image. Next slide, please. This is one of 2 entry control buildings located on the main road leading to the test site. So the activity we've observed here is just arrival and departure of various types of vehicles, sedans and buses, things like that. Next, please. This slide simply highlights some of the type of activity I observed as I looked through the last 9 months of imagery. I'll speak more about each of these in the following slides. To the right of the slide, you'll notice I included a close-up shot of the south portal and spoils pile, which was taken shortly after some flooding washed a large amount of that spoils pile away, and I'll discuss that more a little bit later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. This image from May of last year shows a very active facility. There are vehicles in the operations compound. You can also see mine ore cars outside the tunnel entrance, used to transport the spoils or the dirt from the tunnel to the piles themselves. Take note on this image of the size of the spoils pile. It's large. You can see also some established paths and various peaks on the pile as well. Next slide. This image was taken 5 months later, shortly after the flood that I mentioned earlier. If you point your attention to the spoils pile, you can see it appears a lot skinnier than it did in the previous image. The pile has been washed away along with the mine ore cars that were present in earlier coverage. As a side note, one thing I love about this image is the high-off nadir angle in which it was taken gives you some additional insight into the rough terrain in which this facility was placed. Next slide. This image was taken last month prior to the latest test. There's a amount of activity noticeable on this image. When you consider that the area is covered in snow, the fact that the main road between the operations compound and the south portal is free of snow is indicative of ongoing activity. Next slide, please. We can also see activity at the west portal entrance. Once again, that dirty brown snow is an indication of high traffic volume in and out of the tunnel itself. Next slide, please. So we imaged Punggye-ri the day after the latest test. And as you can see, once again, there's the dirty snow at the entrance of the portal there in an otherwise snow-covered facility. The activity suggests the latest test may have been conducted at this location. And although I didn't include a slide of the south portal of this date of imagery, there was no activity observed in that area, so it didn't feel that it was pertinent. Next slide. Second presentation, and I'll now turn my time over to DJ Malman, one of our senior analysts.
Good morning. I'm the DigitalGlobe Analytics team, and I will discuss the status of the Hejlish oil infrastructure. Next, please. We've been around the globe, so I first want to reorient us to Sudan, provide an extremely brief history of the Hejlish oil development, and for a more thorough review of DigitalGlobe's imagery coverage during the 2012 conflict, ending with a look at our latest clear image. First, orientation. Sudan was the largest country on the African continent, measuring 2,000 kilometers north to south and upward of 1,500 kilometers east to west. But on the 9th of July of 2011, the Republic of South Sudan was created, taking a good third, the southern third of Sudan. The new republic acquired 75% of the oil production formerly part of Sudan. The area of Hejlish is where we're going to concentrate our attention. This area can be pronounced Heglig. In South Sudan, you would refer to it as Panthal. The Location Hejlish is 700 kilometers southwest of Khartoum and 6 kilometers northwest of Juba, and it lies in the Muglad Basin. Next slide, please. Development of the Hejlish oil field began in 1982 by Chevron. It was plagued by continued conflict that forced Chevron to sell its exploration rights. Now, Petroleum Oil Company acquired rights and further developed the field in 1996. In January of 2012, when Sudan stopped the flow of oil, this area was producing upwards of 115,000 barrels of oil per day. Next slide, please. The time during this session to cover all the battle activity in the Hejlish area, so I will concentrate on the central processing facility. You'll miss the 2 large storage tanks sort of located in the center here. Their orientation is going to change as we go through and look at several slides. Hopefully it won't confuse too many people, but I'll be able to set this up so that you had a good viewing angle and that it didn't look like the oil was going to come pouring out of those tanks right onto you. Next slide, please. On the 10th of April of 2012, South Sudanese forces attacked Sudan Armed Forces positions in Hejlish and forced them to retreat. Analysis of our first imagery of the area, taken on 16 April, identified light damage to gas separators and small storage tanks at the central processing facility, probably caused by ground fire during the initial conflict. Next slide, please. Rather than continued leaking at these points seen previously, no further damage was observed at the central processing facility 2 days later. Next slide, please. Some damage was observed on 28 April imagery as evidenced by the damaged pumping station, additions, and the presence of firefighting equipment that extinguished a fire near pumping station number 1. Sudan claimed that Sudan bombed the central processing facility, and Sudan countered with a statement that South had deliberately blown up the facility. They did find craters consistent with aerial bombing at other locations around the oil field, but could confirm that the damage seen here was caused by bombs. Next slide, please. May, Sudan forces claimed that they had regained control of Hejlish, while Sudan said they had withdrawn in compliance with the UN demand. A minor cleanup, very little activity was noted. Next slide, please. The oil minister claimed that oil was flowing again from Hejlish in late May. He observed on this 21 May image, the oil minister was a bit premature in his statement. Very little change from 6 May is evident. Next slide, please. Between May and mid-June, repair work was observed in progress. Roof panels were removed, leaks were stopped, and mobile repair equipment had arrived at the central processing facility. Next slide, please. Our most recent image of the central processing facility, which was taken on 5 January of 2013, and best repairs are complete. Image, however, cannot confirm that oil is again flowing in the pipeline. Thank you. I'll pass this back to our moderator.
Thanks very much, DJ, and thank you very much to all our contributors today. As hopefully you can see now, we're ready to take questions. Please put your questions to the panel by using the Q&A or the chat boxes on the right-hand side of your screen, and also most importantly, finally, please direct all your questions to all panelists. So to kick off here, I'm going to actually go back to Joe Ulrich, who looked at Punggye-ri, the North Korean test site for us. Now, there were reports, Joe, of camouflage netting around the site. Is that anything that you have seen in your analysis of that site?
Good question, Raf. Although I have read the same reports, imagery signatures, on the other hand, have not been able to corroborate those reports. I haven't seen any type of indication that those were in fact there.
Right. And Joe Bermudez, I know you've been looking at North Korea for many, many years. What's your take on that? Do you concur?
Yes, I've looked at much of the imagery that Joe has, and I've seen no evidence of camouflage. In fact, during the past month prior to the test, there was actually very little activity that we saw on our imagery.
Interesting. What do you concur from that? Do you think it was because the site was already prepared, or do, how do you read that?
There were visual indications that they had finished the majority of the excavation and preparations for the test months in advance, and only at the last moment, probably under cloudy conditions or at night, when they believed that satellites were not available to observe them, that they did the final preparations. That would be the standard North Korean method of operation.
I see. Excuse me, Andrew Steele. It was interesting hearing your take on J31 at the Shenyang facility. Have you seen other imagery of the J31 or the Project 3111, as it's sometimes known, or for that matter, any other experimental aircraft or yellow prototype aircraft at other sites in China?
Yes, thanks for the question. Of the 21 images acquired in 2012 of the Shenyang aircraft facility, only one image showed the J-31 fighter, and we have not seen the fighter at any other aircraft facility. For your second question of experimental aircraft, yes, we have indeed seen the yellow color on other prototypes and experimental aircraft. Most notably recently, we have seen the Y-20 transport at Xianyang Airbase, as well as the J-15 fighter at the Xianyang carrier training base towards the Bohai Sea. Thank you.
Right, that makes sense. I think we've got another question here, probably for, I'm trying to work out who it would be. Just 1 minute. I think it would be for Andy Dimville. Look at the Iranian site, the target airbase. Did we have any kind of proof, or did you see anything that suggested that the Iranians had used a Shahab-3 missile on that airbase?
Thanks for the question. From the satellite imagery alone, it's really hard to conclude from the imagery and from the impact craters exactly what systems were fired. With the Great Prophet 7 exercises, quite a bit of Iranian media showed ground video of purported Shahab-3 missiles being fired. I have no reason to suggest or to conclude that they weren't used. I can't say that the imagery itself can confirm that Shahab-3 missiles were fired. But again, a lot of media showed a variety of missile systems fired purportedly as part of that exercise. But again, additional information would be required.
Right. Alison, thanks for joining us. Alison's on the line here as well. Alison Piccioni. I know you were very interested in the Iranian target missile exercise as well. I mean, what's your take on what we can see and what we've learned from satellite imagery of this exercise?
Yeah, no, I can't actually. I don't have too many questions over and above the analysis that we have already seen, but I did want to point out it was certainly really quite interesting, the similarities between the Iranian site and the Kandahar Airbase site. I think that's one of the projects that we've done in IHS Jane's Imagery Watch that's really high value, yet sort of gone underreported in the media. If our analyst has anything more to comment on that, I'd be happy to hear, especially if there are any further similarities than what was already mentioned between Kandahar and the current mock airbase that we've seen.
Interesting. Go ahead.
This is Anvil again. Alison, good points. I think that Kandahar was selected to actually convey a very subtle but very clear message to the national community, especially to the United States. Definitely, there are a number of features that are present in the target airbase. There are some road patterns. There are some comparative sizes for similar features in how it was represented in the target airbase versus Kandahar. There are some differences, but I think I would suspect that a lot of that would be to help support specific missile test purposes. So it wasn't just to recreate Kandahar, but send that message, but also to test some of the missile test parameters that they were looking for. But that's the point, Allison. Thank you.
Right. Andrew Davenport. We're going back to the Wengchang space facility. What is your assessment that of the reports that it will be completed by 2014? Do you think that's an accurate assessment of what's going on there?
You know, I do believe that's accurate. Considering the amount of progress in the last 2 years, I would expect the Space Center will be completed by 2014.
Right. And Joe Bermudez, sorry. The same site. Do you think that this would be used for military activities? For example, the use by the Second Artillery Corps.
The capabilities of the site and its location make it ideal to lift heavy payloads into orbit. These payloads could certainly be used for military applications. However, you know, we've seen activity at China's other primary launch sites, such as Wuzhai, where they're expanding the facility, which could indicate a much broader space program and military space program.
Right. I think we've got another question for you, Joe, to stay on the line. We've got a question here about back to North Korea and the Punggye-ri test area. Is there anything that you've seen, either in today's images or other images that you've got at DigitalGlobe, that suggests a potential second nuclear test this year or imminently?
That's a really difficult question to answer. The North Koreans have done it historically, at least we can tell in the imagery, is that they prepare the test site way in advance. They do all the excavation and probably the moving in of major pieces of equipment way before they actually conduct a test. They certainly could have done that here in the South Portal, which they do not appear to have used in its latest test. They, you know, to be honest, they could do it elsewhere in North Korea. North Korea has a large component of ex or former mines that could easily be converted to test. So it's almost an impossible question to answer strictly from the imagery.
Right. A quick question going back to Joe Ulrich about the Russian military facility at Ugardanta. One of our listeners today is saying, pointed out it's got triple fence and it's got triple ditches, and he's wondering why exactly there's such heavy security for ammunition. Is there a possibility, from what you've seen, that it might be something more important?
That's a really good question. So I've been doing imagery analysis for about 15 years now, and whenever there is an ordnance and missile or explosive storage facility within a larger facility or military base, it is heavily guarded and it's heavily fortified to ensure that that important payload is not compromised in any way. That's just a common signature of those ordnance storage facilities. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does. And a quick question about how these images are selected. And one listener was looking at it and saying, well, this just looks like Google Earth. I mean, what's the relationship between this imagery and Google Earth? I think that's probably a question for Joe Bermudez.
Repeat the last part of that question.
Sure.
It came across garbled.
Sure. One of our listeners is wondering what exactly is the relationship between this imagery, the imagery that is appearing in Imagery Watch, and the imagery that someone could get, say, from Google Earth. I'm assuming that this imagery is a lot more up to date, and of course has your analysis put on top. But I was hoping you'd be able to answer that for me.
Certainly. The image that you see on Google Earth tends to be 6 months or older. Additionally, the quality of the image that is provided in Imagery Watch or in this presentation is of a higher quality because each image was individually adjusted and brought out to bring out the maximum of detail. And because imagery, the way it's collected, the imagery you've seen here is using 8 bands of data. The imagery that you see on Google Earth uses just red, green, and blue, the traditional, internet colors, and the colors that your monitor can see. By using the full range of bands, we can actually extract more information and gain more intelligence of it. And this is provided in Imagery Watch as far as the imagery goes. The other thing that many people don't realize is that, for example, for Joe Ulrich's Ugardanta military base, he was able to look at imagery over the past 6 months, and we collected many images over the facility in the past 6 months. So he has the ability to compare on almost a weekly basis. That type of history is not available on Google Earth.
Right, I understand. Thank you very much. One more, I think, back down to Andy Dinville about the Iranian target air base. Comment a little bit on the circular error probables, or CEPs, for the missiles that hit the impact points at the target air base in Iran. I mean, when we look at that, how I know you mentioned a little bit about possible UAV there as well, but I mean, are we looking at something very, very accurate, or how does it kind of does it compare to maybe other countries' CEPs and other countries' missile accuracy?
Okay, good question. I think one of the things that we have to take away from this is that as far as comparing to international or other missile systems, certainly would be a fairly require gathering that data and doing some extensive tests. But before we could really do that analysis, one of the things we'd have to be able to do is understand which missile systems were associated with each strike, and we don't have that information, and can't tell that information from the imagery alone. It's really inconclusive to try to draw that analysis from the imagery and what we see presented in the presentation today. As far as trying to get at that type of information, the types of things that imagery shows us is that they were targeting the center of the airbase. Not all the missiles struck the center of the airbase. You can tell that a very large number of the missiles struck within the 2-kilometer, 3-kilometer extent of the airbase itself. Out of 21, 22 missile strikes, I think all but, just off the top of my head here, I think all but about 4, possibly 5, did not land within a couple hundred meters of the airbase itself. I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of 20 missiles that were striking that close to where I'm at. So certainly it's something to be concerned about if as far as their capabilities. But what we don't know is the 4 or 5 missile systems that did not strike close to the airbase, were they all of one type of missile system? We don't know that information. We can't draw too strong of a conclusion, but we can see the general overall performance of that exercise with some assumptions from last summer. That helps answer the question.
Yeah, Andy, I think it does. And then I think we've got one more question which I will answer myself, which is how exactly we align political information with the imagery analysis. Now, if you look at Imagery Watch, every month, as well as the imagery and the analysis that goes with it, there are also hyperlinks to articles in Jane's publications, such as Jane's Intelligence Review, Jane's Defense Weekly, and also for more technical military aspects, there'll be things going from International Defense Review. So if you look at Imagery Watch, we have combined certain things that you don't get in the actual publication itself, but you can link. We are linking to them, and if you are interested in looking at the political or the military background of some of the things that we're looking at, then it's possible to get hold of that information through your Jane's subscription. It's pretty much run out of time now, so I'm gonna wrap up now, and I'm going to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for this event today, and we hope that you found the presentation useful and informative. I'd like to remind you that a copy of the slides with a simultaneous audio recording of this presentation will be made available to all subscribers of our Intelligence Centres, modules and DS Forecast products, and we'll let you know where you can access this in the next few days. Now, a questionnaire will pop up on your screen when this session ends, and I'd encourage you to provide us with any feedback you may have as to how we can strengthen these briefings. And we look forward to welcoming you to future online briefings, and our next one will be on the 7th of March and is on selected Asian defence technology capabilities. Thank you very much, and goodbye.